Okay, on today's show, I have a special guest. He is your favorite Las Vegas showboy turned rent boy, retired gay porn star, and member of the Log Cabin Republicans. But that's not the most important part. He is also from Saskatchewan, Canada. His name is Christopher Daniels. Welcome to the show, Christopher.
Hi, thank you for having me.
How's that for an introduction?
That was good. You like how you threw in Saskatchewan, Canada in there. That's great.
Well, I know you've done a ton of stuff since then. We're going to talk about, the gamut. And I was thinking right before this, we even have to, mention your book you wrote a few years back, which I think is really awesome. But it sounds like, now you're a podcaster slash provocateur in a different way, in that I think you're tackling issues in a way we don't see every day from, your point of view, and that you're not afraid to, I think, go against conventional thought and opinion right now, which I think is, needed. We need a lot of different opinions in the world. But when I first wanted to do this interview with you, I thought, okay, it's not like this podcast is all horror movies, but I was trying to see if you had any kind of horror movie connection. And lo and behold, in 2015, you were part of this amazing event called Miss Kitty's 15th annual Hollywood Halloween Ball.
I was.
So did you do that?
I don't think that's.
You're on the flyer. Did you actually end up doing it?
I don't think so. Like that sounds like something I would do, but I never. Could I see the flyer? I might have done it. Like honestly.
Well, it was put on by the Boulet brothers, who now do Dragula, and the claim to fame was the special guest Master of Horror Clive Barker. Did you do an event with Clive Barker?
Possibly. I do remember that event because I did a Boulet Brothers event on Halloween that year. So yes, it's all coming back to me now. So, and surprisingly, I was always sober for those events, so it's like I still don't remember because it's a blur. So yeah.
Well, keep that on the back burner. If you start to remember flashes of that, we can start to talk about it. I just thought it was so cool because Dragula's in the air. It sounds like the Boulet brothers have really taken off since then. Hopefully you have some fun anecdotes. But okay, more recently, I was listening to your podcast called, I have to take a lot of notes and my eyesight's really bad, but Red Light Leisures is your podcast. And one of your more recent ones, I think it was a two-parter, you talked with sounds like your very good friend, Monica Rivers.
Yes, Monica Rivers.
Who does drag, and you talked about, RuPaul's drag show. And I thought you guys were great, and I've been listening to your podcast, and I really enjoy all your topics, but I thought the two of you really came alive together. And so I was wondering, do you think you'll do more with Monica?
Well, the original the vision for me was I wanted to do a podcast. I've been wanting to do a podcast for a while, and I wanted to do it with someone because, as I'm sure you know, doing a solo podcast, it's very difficult. It's a lot of work, and it's really hard to sometimes figure out what you're going to say for like an extended amount of time, like more than 10 minutes. Even filling 10 minutes by yourself is even hard. So my goal was to do a podcast with my friend Monica, Jesse, because we're very similar, very much the same kind of person, the way we think, and but he just has a full-time job. He's like such an adult. He's an adult, and I'm kind of not I'm adulting, but I'm not quite an adult yet. So he just has a job, he has a life, and like he couldn't commit to the time. So I told him if he's not going to do it with me on a weekly basis, then he's going to have to come in occasionally, and we're going to just banter us back and forth. And so that was the first time that we did that together. So
it worked. I mean, I would listen to more of that. What's so funny though about Monica Rivers, you see the picture and kind of this sweet Miss America, Marianne from Gilligan's Island look. But then he opens his mouth and he sounds like Gene Hackman.
Pretty much, yeah.
So, which is part of the fun. I mean, you guys sound good together. But I think we're also in this era of everyone's got an opinion. There's a billion podcasts and, people talking about RuPaul's drag show on YouTube. And that's this whole subgenre. Former contestants of Drag Race talking about the current seasons of Drag Race. It's like,
yeah, it's insane.
Oh my God. But it seems like you fall in this kind of in-between world. Obviously, through the porn career, you met a lot of cool people. You're in Las Vegas. Now, you're in this kind of, you wrote a book So you've reached out to people in that way. You started a podcast now. But let's just start back, not quite to Saskatchewan. By the way, which city were you from in Saskatchewan?
The Queen City.
Okay. Because isn't I was hoping it'd be like Saskatoon
No,
or
I'm from the capital city. I just don't say the name of it because everyone makes fun of it. So I just say the Queen City, and most people have no idea. So they're like, "Oh, okay, all right, great, yeah." So,
so how did you get from Saskatchewan to Las Vegas and become a Vegas showboy?
well, the shortened version is, I wanted to be a professional dancer, and so I trained as a dancer as a child, and then after high school, I needed to go somewhere where there was work and that there was opportunity. So you go to the US. That was just basically what you do. So I moved to the United States on a dance scholarship. I studied and danced in classical ballet companies. And then I moved to more commercial style dancing on cruise ships and then Las Vegas. And I just went to where the work was. And then after about 10 years of being, sort of a transient, I just landed in Vegas and then I stayed there for 8 years. And then I moved to Las Vegas about 7 years ago, or Los Angeles 7 years ago. So that's pretty
Mhm.
much that's it in a nutshell.
So how many years were you the Vegas showboy?
Uh, I was a showboy for about 6 years, and then I spent the last 2 years of my time in Vegas just traveling, and that was my home base. I had a home there, and I had a life there. It was very quiet. It's a nice standard of living there, so I stayed there for years, and then I just got to the point where I was like, I couldn't handle it anymore. There's a price that you pay to have a nice house and a nice car and have money and like nice things. It's just like it just wasn't living for me. It was just culturally,
Mhm,
sexually, energy-wise, the city is just dead. I don't care what anyone says, it's dead. There's no culture. And maybe it's
mhm,
getting better, but I couldn't take it anymore. And so I'd much rather live in Los Angeles. I can live in a
mhm,
box. I can live in my car. I don't care. I would much rather do that because at least in Los Angeles, I'm living.
mhm, mhm.
So
Is it expensive to live in Las Vegas?
no, it's not like I'm sure it's gotten more expensive since I left, but like I had a house there
Mhm,
and that I paid a ridiculous like it was so cheap that I got it for. And my payments were like less than $700 a month. It was like 625 dollars a month for my mortgage. And
Wow.
I know, and like so it's a really good quality of life there. And like for some people it works, it really does. But like
Mhm,
for a single guy, and I was really craving more energy. Like you come to a city like LA or New York or somewhere where it's a struggle to live. Like if the rents are high, people are thirsty. People are like they have an energy about them. Like sometimes it's a little psychotic, I would say, a little dysfunctional and toxic, but it's at least this energy of people who are willing to do anything to make it, to live in that city. They'll pay the
mhm,
ridiculous rents. They'll put up with like the craziness because they want to be where they want to be where the action is. And so I'd rather much rather live in a
mhm,
city where that energy is than live in a city where I can have nice things and a nice house and a nice car and all that stuff. It's just those
mhm,
things don't mean anything. I've had all that, and you know what? That's great.
mhm.
I've not had all that, and you know what? I'm just fine. So it was a sacrifice, but it was definitely for the better.
Well, a lot of people, when they think of Vegas, showgirls, they think of the movie Showgirls and those big productions, but they're also smaller, sort of niche productions too. It's not all just, um, God, what was the name of that character? Nomi and Domi. It was so iconic now. But I don't know. Half the fun though of that movie is when you saw the venue she did before she made the big, casino. Yeah, and I just kind of love those little ones with the comedians. And so, what kind of venue did you do when you were a showboy?
My first job in Vegas was in a huge, spectacular, Las Vegas show on the Strip. It was like 88 singers, dancers, acrobats. It was like an old school production, topless show. Very classy. The girls were beautiful, like 6 foot tall female showgirls, and it was great. It was beautiful. It was like classic Vegas. Now that show's closed, and that was the last of its kind. Now there's no other like Las Vegas style review shows like that anymore. So I'm glad I got to be a part
Because
of that.
didn't well, that used to be the staple, but wasn't it taken over by Cirque du Soleil and just a lot more music concerts, like having Celine Dion and all that?
Yes, yes. Cirque du Soleil and the Cirque du Soleil shows, and a big thing that took over was the nightclub. the nightlife. And they've always been had a presence in Las Vegas, but now people go,
Hmm.
they pay ridiculous amounts of money to go to a nightclub and have bottle service, and like they have like different acts going
Mm,
around. Like that's what people do for entertainment now. They don't go see a nice show. They don't go for a show and a dinner and a show anymore. It's like they go to the get trashed
okay.
and the nightclubs, that kind of thing. So that's the
Uh,
entertainment now.
how about magic? Are there still a lot of magicians that seem to take over for a while?
There is a little bit. I feel like people are kind of feel like that's a little hokey now. Like it's just I feel like it's gotten smaller and smaller over the years. And I know like a big one show that I danced in Vegas was it was a magician show. He had tigers, and so. But the thing is, I didn't even realize this till like last year. There's no more tiger shows in Vegas, and there was several. Siegfried and Roy obviously was the big one, but there's other ones like shows with big cats, and they don't have those anymore because of the cruelty towards animals, and like people were protesting all the time. So there's like no magicians with cats anymore. So that's a big one, and they just feel like they're just getting
Uh,
smaller and smaller. There's like Chris Angel and like big ones like that, but there's not that many of them.
mm. Do you remember the hotels that the shows were at? Which casinos? Like, did you do Bally's or
Bally's, yeah, I did Bally's, the Riviera, the Sahara, Imperial Palace, yeah,
kind of the old school feeling ones?
yes.
Because I remember, I've been there a few times. I've never seen a show like that, which I kind of wish I could have to see the traditional. But I just remember like Bally's seemed to still have an old school, kind of show like that. Or remember, I think the gimmicks were coming in, like one that was in the water. Wasn't there one where people got into the tank?
The Cirque du Soleil one, that's the show O at Bellagio. Like there's those are the big production shows now. Those the Cirque it's reserved for Cirque du
Mhm.
Soleil and that's it. And everything else is just like why would you have a cast of like 60 dancers? Like we'll just get a club act with like a headliner and a couple backup dancers. It's cheaper. It's easier to
Yeah.
yeah.
Get
Get
Britney.
Britney.
Yeah, exactly. We get Britney, that brings in a lot of money, so they'll just do that.
Mhm. Do you remember when Cirque du Soleil started I guess, their risque one? It was called Zumanity.
Yeah, yeah. They just closed that show. I don't know what's happening because they've closed a lot of the shows. But yeah, Humanity and that was a great show. Like a lot of I felt like it was a little bit of overkill by the time I left. But the shows all brought a different element of Cirque and like
Mhm.
Vegas. So they do good work. They're beautiful shows. Yeah, but it was just like it was a bit much, I thought.
From the dancing point of view, it seems like the women get all the attention for shows like that.
Oh yeah.
What was it like to be a male dancer in a big Vegas review?
Um, a male dancer in a Vegas review, and the same thing with being in the corps de ballet of a ballet company. It's like we're there to make the woman look good, and that's pretty much where it begins and ends. So
Mm.
yeah,
You do a lot of lifting, like you lift them in the air?
yes, yeah, a lot more in like ballet concert style dancing. But yeah, it's the same thing with like big, in Vegas. Like we're just there to make the girls look good. That was it.
So when like you lift a woman in the show and then there's a jealous dancer next with some marbles,
Yes,
they're just ready to throw it at your feet.
every night you got to dodge those marbles.
Did you have a dressing room where you had to go up like steep ladders like in Showgirls?
Steep ladders, some of the sets, yes. Our biggest thing in the show that I was in, where Monica Rivers was my dresser, climbing up the stairs, like we would have to climb at least 800 stairs per night in the show, and we'd have two shows a night. And like these stairs were sometimes huge, they were sometimes steep, they were sometimes like cement, sometimes wooden. It was just like stairs so yeah, it was a lot of stairs.
Did you ever have like a jealous rival backstage?
Oh yeah, yeah. You get 18 gay show boys in a dressing room together. It's gonna be a little catty, a little bitchy.
I'm just wondering, by that point, since Showgirls was already sort of a cult classic, was there an awareness of that where like did you reference that a lot backstage?
Every night, seriously, every night. There would somehow
If you do that, I got a handful of marbles in my pocket, so you watch it.
seriously every night someone would make reference to marbles. Like that show is like one of the main reasons most dancers move to Vegas because they're like, I just had to do it. I want to be like, no, me alone, and whatever. So yeah.
And they make it seem so incredibly easy. Like she didn't have a dance background. You have a formal dance training. Do you think it's kind of weird how they made it seem like someone without formal training could do what she did?
Yeah, they give a lot of people false hopes with that, but whatever. It's Hollywood, I guess. Whatever works.
And it always gets me in these movies showing dancing where the choreographer goes, "Okay, I'll show it to you once," and she goes, "Pow, pow, pow," and then okay, and they have it perfectly memorized. Can you do that in real life?
I can't. Some dancers can. I can't. No, not me. Sorry.
5, 6, 7, 8, or so. When you were doing training, I think I saw when I was looking you up. Maybe it was on Facebook. A picture of you doing ballet. I don't know if it was a performance or in school or whatever.
I think it was
I mean, you are the real deal. I mean, how long did you train for?
um throughout my childhood, and like I started late. I started at like 4, 12, 13 maybe. So I trained for like 8 or 9 years, and then I continued my training when I moved to the U.S. and then started professionally about a year or so after I moved here. So from the age,
Hmm.
yeah, from a young age, and before that, I was always dance class or theater classes, acting classes, music lessons. I was always been in the arts, so it's always been performing arts.
Hmm. Were you always good at it? Were you always like the top of your class?
Um, no, like I was never the top, but like I w- what I was told, people always said I had a presence about me like that stood out, and they could tell that I had the love of the dance, and so I wasn't the best by any means, but I think people saw that I had natural talent, and that's kind of why I made it as far as I did make
Mhm,
it. It was just a natural ability and good luck and being in the right
mhm.
place at the right time.
Is there a certain cutoff when you're either going to be groomed for professional ballet or it's like, no? Because don't you have to decide that pretty young?
You do, but men have a lot more flexibility with that. No pun intended. But like I started late, and I was still able to have a short career in classical dance. But my problem was I started working professionally too early, and I hadn't really built a solid enough foundation to be a really strong technical ballet dancer. So that is kind of a regret of mine. But I was at a point where I was just like, well, I got to either do ballet, do not do ballet, or work professionally, or keep training. And it was a question of money, and
Mhm,
so I regret that. But yeah, like you really do have to make a choice at a young age and really get the a solid training down before you can go out
mhm.
and work professionally.
So what's that decision like when you realize, okay, I'm probably not going to do classical dance. I'm going to pursue Vegas. What's going through your mind when you say, okay, if I do Vegas, I'm probably not going to do this? Was that were you anxious or was it freeing saying, yeah, this is going to be fun, now I don't have to worry about not getting into, this big ballet company.
Right. I think it was freeing and it was exciting, but at the same time, going into like I left the world of ballet, and I went to dance on cruise ships. And like the thing is, when you're a ballet dancer, you kind of have this idea that maybe I don't know if it's necessarily that you're above everyone, but you feel like I have solid training. I'm an accomplished ballet dancer, therefore I could do that, or I could dance on a cruise ship. Like that's easy. And then I got to rehearsals for Royal Caribbean Productions for my first job on a cruise ship, and I was like, what the hell have I gotten myself into? I was just like, this is way over my head. Just because it's technically not difficult dancing, it made no difference. Like it was just difficult in an entirely other way, and it was a really rude awakening. And I'm glad once I got more comfortable with it, and I started to be able to sort of not feel so awkward doing the movement. It was a bit more relaxing, and it was a bit more freeing because I wasn't like taking class every day. It wasn't as technical, it wasn't as like you know hard. It was a lot more
Hmm.
fun. But just getting to that point though was a lot of work, and it was not easy by any means.
Hmm. Was the camaraderie with the other dancers on the ship better than camaraderie in Vegas?
Um, on the ship, it's different. It doesn't matter what the camaraderie is. With the other dancers, when you're with anyone for 9 months, you lose your mind. Like you really do. Did like a 9 month contract. I did like an 8 month contract. I did a year long contract. I'm just like I don't know how I did it because you literally like you have no life. You're just on the ship every day, and
Without a break?
yeah, like the thing is, as a dancer, you get breaks all the time, which is even worse because you're doing nothing but you like lay in the sun, go for lunch here, go for dinner there. Like we had a lot of time off, but like idle hands are like
But within the boat, you couldn't go back home.
right. No, no, yeah, you stayed on there for 9 months straight, like the entire time,
So it's kind of like being in the military in a way.
or jail. Yeah,
Jail
feels like,
or doing a tour of service.
but you're like in a closet, a shoebox. Like literally, it was, and you're sharing a room with someone, and like it's probably the size of most people's bathrooms, and so to
Yeah.
live like that, and like it was also worse for other people. So I'm by no means complaining, even though I am complaining. But it's a hard life too. It was I could never do it.
What are the rules? So, you're a commodity on the boat, you're kind of the stars, people see you in the show. During your off time, are you really segregated from the other passengers?
A little bit, but the thing is, with the dancers, the problem was we were segregated from the passengers, but we were more actually with the passengers than we were with the other crew members, so that created problems. Like the other crew members, they hated us. They hated the dancers,
Oh.
except for if they're a girl and they were hot. Then they loved the dancers. But if you were like a gay guy on a cruise ship, they hated you. They treated you like you were nothing because a lot of the dancers come on the ship, and I don't know what it is about dancers, but they come on with this air about them that's just like, I'm they're not intentionally trying to like exude this, but like this air of like I'm better than everyone because I'm a dancer, and maybe it's just the way dancers hold themselves. So it's just, and people ended up resenting the dancers, and so it was difficult.
And they're usually good looking and, they're in this position of glamour and maybe perceived as, oh, I'm doing real work. The dancers just show up, for an hour at night and then get to party the rest of the time.
Exactly. Like they have no idea the training that goes into being a dancer, and but I get it. I totally get it. Like we basically showed up some days and just did an hour of work and then we went back to our cabin. Like, and we got paid way more than the other crew members. So there's a lot of resentment there, but at the same
Yeah.
time it's different worlds.
Yeah. So, did you ever have like kind of fans or groupies on board where they saw your show and followed you around the deck during the day?
Yeah, there was a couple. There was a lot of, it was like the cruises were always we called them newlywed or nearly dead. And so it was really hard to make a connection with some people, but a lot of times you'd get like, a passenger that was with his grandparents' anniversary cruise, and like we would sometimes hook up with the passengers, like behind closed doors, and it was very secret. And we would get kicked off, like we would get in trouble if they ever found out. So we would have to like tiptoe around. And but I hooked up with passengers all the times, and miraculously, I did not get caught. So I don't know how that happened.
So, how'd you go from cruise ship to Vegas?
It was kind of a natural progression for dancers. It's like, well, I want to get off the boat. I need to do something where
Mhm.
I don't have my sea legs anymore. So there, it's like, well, New York, LA, or Vegas. Those were the three options, and Vegas just seemed like a safe and like realistic option for me. I thought I'll try Vegas first, and then I moved.
And this was like 2010,
Oh no, this was like
give or take.
2005.
Oh, 2005. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that's when I moved.
So before the housing bubble bursted.
So I moved to Vegas when the
Because Vegas got hit kind of hard when that. So you were like 5 years before all that went down or so.
And by the time I was ready to buy a house, that's when the bubble had burst, and that's when I got a great deal on the house. So it worked in my favor. So it was good.
I'm so glad that you bought after. Then you would have gone underwater and had a huge mortgage. So when you were talking with Monica Rivers, one thing I noticed on the podcast, you mentioned when you're in a Vegas show, every year you had to re-audition
Twice a year,
twice a
every
year. Oh
six
my
months.
God.
Yeah,
And you're saying, it's not for the shy, it's you're still doing it in the G string or whatever. And of course, I couldn't help but think of that classic scene from Showgirls when Nomi's auditioning and he whips out the ice cube. So, is there a male equivalent of the ice cube, or did it matter if like the male dancer's nipples were erect during the audition?
it was. You know what? It was not as demeaning as that, and it was very sterile. It was very much. It felt like you were being seen by a doctor when you had to strip down to your G string, because literally, it just they want to inspect your body. They're like, want to see if things are jiggling, and they want to see if things are firm, and it just was not humiliating in the sense that we had to like degrade ourselves like that. It was all just very clinical, very sterile. So yeah,
And then once you got picked again, then they said, and you can only eat brown rice and vegetables.
exactly. That's right.
So I was wondering about that because I could see you needed a lot of carbs to dance because you burn a lot off. But where's the protein in the diet? What's going to happen to your muscles?
You're allowed to have a chicken breast. That's a protein right there.
Okay. Would you stick to a pretty good diet when you danced, or did you have a sweet tooth?
Oh no, I still do. I eat horribly. Like not horribly, but like I've never been concerned about my diet or my weight. I've been lucky in that sense. I've actually had to fight to keep weight on, so but it's a lot of people, they really do struggle. Like the girls especially, God, they struggled a lot to because they knew every night they had to be like tied up in, or zipped up into those costumes, and everything was out. So
Yeah. But when you're a dancer too and you're young, you just burn calories like crazy, I'm sure. Did you just get this false sense of being in, uh, you can eat anything you want, and then maybe you hit 30 and start to realize, oh, maybe I can't eat everything I want?
yeah, you're like, I'm gonna be skinny forever, and or I'll have the energy to go to the gym after two shows. Like you think that until you hit about 30, 35. It was 35 for me. Then I was like, okay, I'm getting old now. I can feel it.
Oh my God. So after a few years in Vegas, which sounds amazing, Um, how did you enter then, the adult film world? Was that kind of what do you think being in the shows kind of led to that, or do producers see you in shows and approach you? I mean, how does all that work?
I honestly do think that it was just like a slow, I don't want to say it was like a moral decay, but it was like you first like you go to Vegas and then you get into a topless show. And then shortly after that I started modeling at different art colleges, perform or art schools. I would model nude. And then after that it was like, well, a breakup led to me thinking maybe I should escort because I was going to be kicked out of the house I was living in with my boyfriend, and I needed a place to live. So I was like, maybe I'll just escort because people had offered me money to sleep with them before, and I'd always been like, no, I'm not a hooker. And then by the time I needed money, I was like, maybe I should be a hooker. And so I just kind of started toying with that idea. And then eventually, when you work as an escort, inevitably we're like, maybe I should do porn then because that helps promote your escorting, and that's how you make the money. So that was the progression. And so it was escorting, and then porn, and then porn was a
Mhm.
struggle for me to like get into and start. But then once I did, I kind of loved it in a way. It was kind of like a way of performing in a theater, in a show somehow. And I kind of had grown up and my body had changed, and I started taking steroids, and my body like looked, I wasn't ashamed of my body for once, embarrassed. And so I was like, I'm gonna go have sex on camera then. If people think I'm hot, then sure. I never thought I was hot. I never thought I was attractive, but I was like, if someone says I'm hot, then I'm gonna exploit that and make some money on that. So that's basically what I did.
Mm. Was there something in your mind where you thought, well, if I start to do that, I probably won't be dancing anymore? I mean, were you afraid there'd be like a stigma if I do adult work, I probably won't, be dancing?
Yeah, and that is kind of the case, but at the same time, by the time I started doing adult films, I was 30 years old when I went into the industry, and I was like on my last leg for dancing at that point. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I didn't want to be a starving artist, even though I did actually work for 2 years as a dancer in other shows. At that point, I was like, hire me, don't hire me. I really don't care. I have this other gig that's going to pay me five times as much to do like 4 hours of work. So, but
Mhm.
at that point, I didn't care if anyone hired me, even though I did work a little bit after I started working adult films.
Well, in Vegas, can a male dancer get hired at a later age than a female dancer? Do you have a little longer life?
A little bit, but I guess it depends on. There's very little work for men in general. There's very little work for dancers in general, especially men. So, you do kind of have that freedom to. You don't have to stress as much. You can be a little older, but by that point, I was 30, and I was just like, I'm done. Like, I don't want to be starving and poor and struggling
Hmm.
anymore.
So you kind of knew at that point you did dancing for a decade. Now you're moving into a new career, a new life.
Yeah, and
Is that your thing? Do you think every 10 years you make a major life change?
you know what? Now that you say that, yeah, because I've just recently made another life change, and I'm going to be 40 in like a month. So I guess so. Yeah, every 10 years. It's not
Mhm.
a conscious effort, I think, but that's sort of the way it's gone. I don't know if that's normal, but yeah, every 10 years, I guess.
Mm. So between escorting and then together with the adult work, how many years total would you say that was, that period?
Oh, 10 years. It was 10 years. Yeah.
Okay. So when you wrote the book, was that kind of at the tail end of that, or were you still involved when you wrote your book?
That was like right smack in the middle. I think I just started. I'd been escorting for about a year or two, and I just started doing porn. So yeah, it was actually my third year, fourth year into all that, and I wrote the book
Hmm.
in a very short amount of time. And then so like like the fifth year, my that life is when the book came out.
Which, by the way, is called Money's on the Dresser: Escorting, Porn, and Promiscuity in Las Vegas. and it's on Amazon, so people can buy it there. And I think there was like, well, there's a good blurb, and then you could read like part of the first chapter. So I was reading some of it. It's very well written. But I remember the beginning kind of, I think, walks through a potential customer contacting you and just you kind of realizing, oh, wow, this is kind of different than I expected. Or, they had an interesting request. And you're kind of in your mind imagining what it's going to be and then thinking, can I follow through and do it? I think the request was like slapping him around or something.
That was one of them. Yeah, there was two, but that was one
Okay.
of them. Or stomping the hell out of his balls. That's what he wanted. He wanted
That's it. That's it.
cock and ball
Okay.
torture. Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting you open with that. So it seems like you really want to grab the reader right off the bat, plunge them into this world. So in writing this book, how did you sum it up? It sounds like it's not just a diary of I did this, I did that, but did you go on this emotional journey of how, this kind of changed you, or a year into it, 2 years into it, how your perspective changed?
Honestly, I don't really know what I wanted people to get out of the book at the time. My one regret with the book is that I really didn't spend enough time really writing it and really being a little bit more detailed and really exploring my purpose in writing it. But at the time, I wrote it in a short amount of time, and I wanted to be an escort who wrote a book. So I accomplished that goal.
Hmm.
But looking back, I just think I don't really know what the purpose in that, because I've written a second book, but I'm waiting to publish it because I'm just sort of unsure about some parts of my life that I haven't really come full circle yet. So I'm a little, but with that book, I just wanted it to be a collection of short stories, because honestly, it just felt like every single day that I would wake up, it was just something new that I'd never been in contact with, and I feel like I was really naive, and I had no idea this whole
Hmm.
other dark, twisted, crazy world was out there, and it's a really big world with a lot of people involved, and it became my world, and I was just like, wow, okay, like sure, you want me to do what? Okay, and like I would always hear out a request, and I'd always contemplate it, because I just kind of felt like the more stuff I did sexually, and the more experienced I got, I just kind of felt like the less my judgments of others became, and I just kind of feel like it's not like the lower I sank, the more open or less judgmental I became. Like kind of in a sense, but I was just like after I started doing everything that I said I would never do, my judgments of others just disappeared, and I just became like I have no reason to
Hmm.
judge anyone, because look at me, I've done everything I said I would never do, and like that's my story, I guess. So it
Hmm.
made me really drop my preconceived notions about people, and it really made me realize you don't know where someone's coming from, and you can't cast judgment on them or think that they're a
Hmm.
certain way or had this. You don't know what their upbringing was. You don't know their backstory. So it made me really lose my judgments of others, and just be a little more kind and patient with others.
So maybe more empathetic.
Yes, more exactly, more empathetic.
So when you wrote the book, how far were you into the adult film career? Was that just starting when you wrote the book?
Yeah, it was just starting. It was about a year into it, and I was still pretty new and still kind of figuring out if I actually wanted to do that. So the book was mainly about the escorting, and then yeah, no,
Okay.
yeah.
Then the beginning. So in the new book, are you going to maybe cover more of the adult work part of your life?
Maybe my this the new book is it's about my time after I moved to Los Angeles until current present day. And by the time moved to Los Angeles, I had been working in porn for like 3 years, and I'd had enough. Like that was a long time, and I was sort of like um phasing that out of my life. And I
Hmm.
after moving to Los Angeles, I did about a year and a half, yeah, about a year and a half of working in adult films, and that's when it was all just kind of spiraled out of control with the drugs and with fucking up, and just I made a lot of mistakes, and I really like damaged my reputation, and it kind of forced me to sink into this like little dark hole where I was just like very comfortable with just doing drugs all day, getting high and partying, and like, and not to say those things are bad, but it just got so out of control, and I didn't know what else
Hmm.
to do, because it was comforting, and I still had a lot of money, at the time, so I could do that. And I was like, I still had an apartment, I still had a car, I still had cash, and I always had people living with me because people needed a place to stay. So I just but it got out of control, and then the book sort of talks about that part of my life when it spiraled out of control, and I just sort of had a little crisis, and I committed.
Hmm.
I no, I didn't commit. I attempted suicide a couple years ago, and I was in such a dark place. I was so depressed. I felt so alone, and like I never thought I would ever get to that place of like committing suicide. I feel like such a cliche to even say it. So like it's kind of pathetic, but I was really pathetic at the time. I was sad, and I was so depressed, and I never thought it would get that bad, but it did. And so I kind of talk
Hmm.
about that part of my life, and then going from that to right after that, I became homeless for a year, and I would hit rock bottom. Like it was bad, like really bad. And it was just my process and my time going from that dark place in my life to like sort of,
Hmm.
that journey getting from there to where I am today. So, yeah.
We have a quote on your Instagram page. You have several quotes and pictures, but I guess I wrote this one down. You quoted Janet Louise Stevenson. Authenticity requires a certain measure of vulnerability, transparency, and integrity. Do you think you had to go through this whole journey, to get to a current state of authenticity in your life?
Yeah, I honestly, maybe other people see it differently. I think I've always tried to be authentic. I've always tried to be genuine because I feel like those are the qualities that are really missing in people. And everyone, one thing that I hate when people say is, "I hate fake people. I hate when people are fake." It's like we all hate when people are fake. That's nothing new. That's not like a revelation that we've never heard before. But it's like what you don't see is authenticity. You don't see people vulnerable, and that's what I always hope to be to others because I think when you're vulnerable and you're just letting yourself be open, people can relate to you and they can see a part of themselves in you,
Hmm.
and you can learn something from each other because we all may hate fake people, but we don't realize like we're truly not letting others see who we really are. We're so scared and so afraid of what other people think about ourselves, even though we all put up this front
Hmm.
of like, I don't care what people think about me. I'll just do what I want. And it's like, no, we do. We care deeply, and we live our lives for other people. And
Hmm.
it's very shallow. It's sad, and I hate that I
Hmm.
do it too. I'm not judging other people, but I just one thing I'm missing, and I require from all my friendships and all the people that are in my life, they have to be authentic, they have to be genuine, they have to be vulnerable at all
Hmm.
times, and like that helps me learn from them, and I don't put on a front with me. Just be real and be.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying be real because we all say be real. I mean it. Be real. Be who you are, and like just never be afraid to admit that you're weak and that you don't know everything. So yeah, authenticity is just really important to me.
Do you think there's such an all or nothing feeling people have? Like people say, oh, you're either all good or all bad or all pure or all not, you know, and maybe it starts at, oh, you're a Vegas dancer. So maybe it's like, well, they just, attach all these values to that. You're not like us, middle America, married with kids and worried about the PTA. They might think, well, he has a colorful, glamorous life. So there's a judgment there. It's not necessarily negative, but people just saying you're so different than they are. They can't relate to your world. But do you think within even these niche worlds and these subcultures, there's still its own kind of morality? Like when you start doing escorting, housewives in middle America, that's so far removed from what they're doing, they might think, oh, he shouldn't be doing that, It's just so different. But when you're in that world, there's different degrees of, well, I can do this, but I can still do it nobly or ethically. It's not, you can't just say, just because I'm doing this, everything's all wrong. I can still try to do it in an ethical way, or even adult work. A lot of people say, oh, that's bad. But when you're doing it, you can still say, well, maybe there's a way I can do it and still be healthy and still protect myself. And even with, what was the last thing I was thinking of? I mean, just, you said you did drugs, and a lot of people say, well, that's just self destruction. But even, you're still living your life. Drugs is one aspect. The outside world would just dismiss you totally. Oh, you're doing drugs. But so when you're in these worlds, were you finding a way to say, yeah, I'm kind of, in this subculture, but I still want to do it ethically? How did you reconcile all that?
1 second, my computer's about to die. I'm gonna get the adapter. Hold on.
Okay. As we get to the big questions. Oh my goodness, that's the Jesus Christ Superstar record in the background. Okay, and by the way, before we jump in, the YouTube people will see this, but the if people are just hearing this on a podcast, they won't see it. Before we dive back in, I'm saying you have the flashiest wall behind you with Baroque wallpaper and Jesus Christ Superstar soundtrack. And is that like a Catholic prayer candle or?
Well, yes, and the Ten Commandments are behind me. All my inspiration. Yes, it's all there. It's my life.
Well, we'll get into that later. So, but when you're in these worlds that a lot of people think are these alternative subcultures, how do you in your mind give yourself this hierarchy of I'm going to try to do these as ethically as possible.
Right. I think we're so black and white, like you said. I think we only can live our life with absolutes, and it's the same thing with labels and sexuality. Like you're gay, you're straight, you're bi, you're this, you're that. And if you like say, well, maybe I'm not bi. Well, are you straight? Well, no. Are you gay? No. Well, then what are you? Like, if you don't know what you are, then you're just confused. And it's just like there are no absolutes. It's all a gray area. And like I personally live in a bubble. I've lived in a bubble for many years. Like either whether it be the dancing bubble, the porn bubble, the escorting bubble, the drug bubble. Like, and so for me, like, and I get so out of touch with like reality in some ways because like living in Los Angeles and the life that I've led, like it just blows me away when I'll meet someone who like is so just like "Ugh, you did drugs or you did this kind of drug and they're disgust or their like look of disapproval and I'm like okay, well, do you eat sugar? Do you drink coffee? Like, do you eat fast food? Like, what's your poison? Like, we all have them. Like, even though
Mhm.
like you know when I was doing meth, crystal, like it's an upper, right? And so meth to me would do the exact same thing as what a strong cup of coffee would do to someone else. So it's just like I know one of them is more toxic to your body, but they're both producing the same results. So you're really not that much better than me. So you can get off your high horse. And even in the drug world, it's like
Mhm.
if you do this kind of drug, that's acceptable. If you do that kind of drug, that's not acceptable. And then everyone that does that kind of drug, they're like, well, if you take the drug this way, that's okay. But if you do the drug this way, that's just disgusting and gross. Like if you smoke it, it's this, and
Mhm.
if you inject it, it's just like all these hierarchies, and it's just like we're, I think the thing is, we all have to point the finger
Mhm.
at someone else because if you're pointing the finger at someone else, nobody's going to be pointing the finger at you. It's going to deflect any attention off you to someone else. So that's safer. Let's just all point and judge them, that person, because then no one's
Mhm.
going to look at me and judge me or know what I'm doing. So I just think that's
Mhm.
in general that's just kind of how we are as humans, and but
Well, in retrospect, looking back to think, oh, I associate some of that with low points of my life. Well, the flip side is you're still experiencing a lot of pleasure during some of that too. And people forget, even though there's a downside, you have those peak moments. So like when you're, doing adult work, you're buff, you've been working out, you're this star at a white party in Palm Springs. What does that feel like? Is that just euphoric? The highest heights you reach, when you felt the most desired and envied. And I mean, what were those highs like?
it felt amazing. And then just add 3 tabs of ecstasy on top of it, and you felt just like, wow, amazing, even more. So, it's addicting. But then all of a sudden that amazing is just like, well, it goes down a bit. Then you're like, well, I wish I looked better. I wish I looked even hotter or bigger, had more money. It's just like there's always something. And that's why I'm glad I got to experience
Mhm.
like being part of the like not the top, but like being in that group. And I've also I've experienced being at the bottom, being homeless, not having any money, having to go to bed hungry. Like I've experienced all of it, and at the end of the day, it's just like it's, it's really not like it's good. Like I'd much rather be um, idolized for my body and like looking good and being having money to being poor and not having or whatever. But at the same time, it's not none of that matters. None of it matters, and it helped me realize like, well, what does matter, and I had to figure that out for myself and
Mhm.
sort of um, get centered as far as like what I believe spiritually and more like what are my morals, what are my values, what's important to me, like that kind of stuff. And I had to really go back to those basics
Mhm.
and figure those things out because at the end of the day, if you're a pretty face, you're just a pretty face. You're going to get ugly one of
Mhm.
these days. You're going to get out of shape and nobody's going to want you. So figure it out before it
Mhm.
gets to that point.
Well, do you think in certain communities, maybe they see the downsides to some stuff, but they're so hesitant to criticize? because they feel so much criticism just for existing that even if you've lived these experiences, they don't want to be too critical because that might be perceived by the general public as a blanket criticism. So, say even in the gay community, there might be, drug use in certain pockets, that might be destructive. But there's a hesitancy to criticize that because that might be seen by the general public as this blanket criticism of the gay community in general. So do you think there is too much of this, hesitancy to just step back sometimes and say, look, it's okay to take a critical look at ourselves. If we're doing something self-destructive, it's okay to talk about it.
Right. I don't know why people don't want to talk about it. And when they do talk about it, I still feel like there's an air of judgment and an air of like a condescending, looking down on those that do whatever it is that they do. And
Mhm.
um, it's unfortunate. And again, I think it goes back to just like if I can judge that person and be a part of that, torch lynching mob, then it'll deflect any attention on me. So it's a safer place to be, yeah, but it's not healthy. And one thing that I think,
Do you think there's ever an element of jealousy?
oh yes, oh
Where
yes,
it's like, oh, the pretty party boys that we weren't adored like they were. Now the retribution, and so it's kind of like, well, I guess you got what you deserved.
oh yeah, totally. And you know what? I whatever people thought I thought of myself, I never really thought of myself. And like that, some people can say, oh, whatever, like, and you can think someone is a certain way, but you really don't know what's going on inside their head. Because honestly, I know some of the most beautiful men in the world, and I live next to them, and it's in LA, but they're the most insecure men a lot of the time because you don't know their upbringing, and it's just like just those blanket statements like you were talking about, like
Mhm.
we can't do that because it's just, and I feel like also gay men are so bitter and so angry for many reasons, but I feel like there's just a lot of resentment, and it
Mhm.
causes you to just age faster and just to not be a happy person. I can attest to that. I've been the one that's bitter,
Mhm.
and I've been the one that was being hated on. So I get it. I get
Mhm.
both sides of it, and I understand. But I think there needs to be a
Mhm.
place where people are really asking themselves, why do I feel like this? Like, why am I so angry? Why am I so resentful or whatever towards this person I've never even met or had a conversation with?
Mhm. Well, it sounds like this journey has made you a little more conservative, and in the gay community to be a little upfront about that seems difficult now. Like for you to tell everyone you're a log cabin Republican now. It seems like there's not much inclusion the minute you declare yourself a Republican.
There's no inclusion. Honestly, like we
Did that surprise you? Did that surprise you?
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't think we were as polarized as we are now, like 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And I don't think that people talked about as politics as much now because that's such a part of our culture, you know. Um, it just it
And we're a lot more online than even 10 years ago.
Right. It's like it's such a huge part of our everyday life now, weirdly. And so yeah, and there's this I feel like I don't know if everyone is aware of this, but we talk about this as conservatives. It's what's harder, coming out of the gay closet or coming out of the conservative closet? And I'm telling you,
Mhm.
coming out of the conservative closet has been awful. It's been horrible. I've
Mhm.
had a very hard time with it. And my coming out process, easy. It was great. Party.
Mhm.
Coming out as a conservative, I've lost countless amounts of friends. I've lost contact with family members.
Mhm.
I've lost work. I've lost everything. Not everything, but like I feel like everything some days. And I won't change that. I'm
Mhm.
never gonna like not believe what I believe.
And then the mainstream conservatives might be hesitant to accept you being gay, so you're stuck in this neither side. You have one foot in both sides, but not full acceptance in either side.
We're a minority within a minority that's hated by the majority. That's what it feels like, and it
Well,
sucks.
in the 2016 election, I remember when Colby Keller said, almost ironically, that he's going to vote for Trump, even though he was, I think, wasn't he more of an independent? He wasn't even identifying as a Republican, but kind of, it was almost like this with a sense of irony almost. And people, there was an uproar of, don't, you can't even joke that because people might take you seriously and that might cost the election. And just this crazed backlash. and it just seemed like a simple thing, and it was just kind of amazing. But I couldn't help but think it was in part compounded because he was, a good-looking adult star. At what point, are these pure reactions, and at what point are they kind of muddied by maybe some resentment about, you know, you're not what I am. The resentment of a young, virile, outspoken porn star who is not afraid. I think part of it is just that fearlessness a lot of people are afraid of nowadays.
Yeah, and I think
I
that
mean, do you think that do you identify as fearless and not care what other people think?
um no, like I do care what people think, but at the same time, I have to put that aside because what I believe in politically and not just politically, but for my morals, my values, and the overall for the overall good of society, I feel like I have to be true to that. I really do because it's so
Hmm.
important, um and I've seen like and a lot of it a lot of it boils down to and like someone who suffers from this will never admit it because they don't even recognize it within themselves. But it's Trump derangement syndrome. It really is, and it's not just to say people that hate Trump have Trump derangement syndrome. It is this anger and this hatred and this like this one tunnel vision towards hatred of Trump. And that's what
Hmm.
caused me to become a supporter of Trump was because I was just looking around me after a year of watching everyone bash on Trump, just be like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? Like, why are these people that I respect, that are functioning members of society, taxpayers, and like these were college graduates, these were doctors, lawyers, people that I knew, why do they hate this man so much? Like, and not only that, but why are they being like, they were like one name calling away from being like Trump is a poopy head. Like they were just being so childish about it. I was just like, what is wrong with you people? And so
Hmm.
that's when I said, okay, I need to stop and just examine what's going on because this is weird. People are being weird.
Hmm.
People are being so petty and
Well, you're on Twitter.
yeah,
Twitter seems to bring out a lot of this.
so toxic. It's so bad. Like, and and it's all an echo chamber. Everyone's just in these echo chambers. And if you dare say anything that they don't agree with, then you're like, you're out, you're done, you know? And it's
Mhm.
just like,
But isn't part of what's being in, this, what do you call it, subsect of society, is that freedom to not think like everyone else. But then, isn't it kind of shocking when you suddenly realize, no, there's rigid rules over here too?
what do you
Did
mean?
that shock you?
Can you
Well, if you think, okay, I don't have to think like, a Midwestern, mom and pop raising kids. I'm living a glamorous life, but then you kind of realize everywhere you rest, every community has its own set of rules.
Yeah. Yeah, and like, I'm a part of a community that's open-minded, that promotes love, that promotes acceptance, and they're some of the most unloving, unaccepting people that I've ever met. And it blows my mind every single day how people want to just shut down the conversation if you don't agree with them and you're just banished from their life. And it's just like, what happened to love? What happened to like love trumps hate? Like,
Mm-hmm.
where is that love? You know?
And so much of it is just seems theory. People are bashing each other online over theories of things that haven't even happened. Just what's going on in your head. It's like this theoretical war.
And I think, and one thing that I just want to say to people, like, I just want to say to them, I just want to like, I wish we could just take away the anger, just silence it for a second, and just be like, what are you so mad at? Why do you hate Trump so much? Like, honestly, tell me, why are you so angry about this? Like, why do you have so much like energy into
Mhm.
this? Like, because it's not about Trump, it's not about politics, it's about something deeper that we're not discussing, and nobody's talking about it. We're fine with just leaving
Mhm.
it rest on the hate on Trump. We hate Trump, we hate Republicans,
Mhm.
we hate conservatives. And I'm just like,
So no more war. Like that's the argument.
yeah, like that's where the argument starts and that's where it ends. And you know what? Like, I just want to say to
Yeah.
people, like, tell me why you hate Trump. Why do you hate him? He's a
Mhm.
racist.
Well, at what point are you just letting go of that, or even engaging with
Oh,
those
I've
people?
had to completely let go of it because I've engaged in that conversation. I've had the conversation, and I've
Mhm.
had the conversation because I honestly want people to not be a Trump supporter, but I
Mhm.
want people to really question why they feel certain things and why they're acting the way they're acting,
Mhm.
and what they're listening to. Maybe what you're being told is not the truth. Maybe,
Mhm.
maybe you're being lied to. Did you ever consider that? And like, but they're thinking,
Yeah.
well, maybe you think I'm just like, I just feel like it's such insanity that I don't even engage with people anymore about it because it gets us nowhere. And if
Mhm.
anything, it gets.
But do you think part of it too is you're approaching 40
Mhm.
and you've lived a lot of life? How can you at 40 still think like a 20-year-old with all you've experienced? And it's kind of like, how can you ignore your experience at this point? Because that's to hold on to old beliefs, you kind of almost have to fool yourself and pretend like you haven't gone through this journey. Do you think that's part of it?
Yeah, and I think that it's safe. It's safe. You know what? I could have just kept in line with my old way of thinking and beliefs, and that would have been fine because it would have been safer and it wouldn't have brought
Mhm,
on a lot of these problems in my life. So it's better to just keep it safe, remain with the crowd, don't
mhm.
step out of line because I don't want to draw attention to myself, and it's much easier, like, and it's
But what was like an epiphany for you when you kind of realized you could let go of things you believed in?
Um, well, that happened twice. That happened coming from a conservative upbringing and my religious upbringing, and coming out of the closet. It happened then, and then it happened again when I came out of the closet again, like a couple years ago. And it was scary. It really was. And I deal with this on a daily basis. And it's once you're like, red pilled or whatever, and you kind of like you honestly you feel like you've seen the light and you've seen like the way things really are. And I'm gonna say this, like, I don't necessarily have all the answers and I don't necessarily really know what's really going on, even though I like to think I do. I may be completely
Mhm.
wrong, but I feel like you get to that point where it's just like you start questioning all your beliefs and you question everything and you're just like, it's scary and it sucks and I hate it, but at the same time, like, it's my new life and I you have to accept it, You can't go back to the way you were because it's different now, and it's like growing pains.
Well, that seems reflected in your podcast because your podcast, you do a lot of deeper issues and make commentary on that. So, do you think that's what motivated the podcast? Because you did have all this on your mind?
Yes, and I really actually the podcast took about a little over 2, maybe almost 3 years to actually get up and running because I was still in my old school of thought, my old way of thinking, and then everything was just changing. And then I was like, I was trying to capitalize on something in my life, and I was like, well, why not capitalize on the following I had from porn and like find a way to like build a new career based on that. And then so that's what I started to do. But then I was like, well, what am I going to do? I have these.
Like you and Kim Kardashian.
Yeah, exactly. Or like Jenna Jameson. It's like, how do I like still keep those people who supported me when I was this way, but now I'm like this? And there's also the element of I was a sex worker. Okay, a lot of people aren't going to be tuning into my podcast to listen to what I think about politics or Trump. Like, they really don't care because like when you're an actual celebrity, it's annoying to hear what they think and you don't want to hear them preach to you. And when you're like a non-celebrity, like a porn star, it's even worse. It's even more like, oh, who the fuck do you think you are? Like, we don't really care who you voted for. So I get that. Like, people just want you to like shut up and look good or be hot or whatever, and be attractive. And I didn't want to come out there and be like, I'm a porn star and I have an opinion because you know what? Who the fuck cares? Nobody cares. I don't even care some days. But at the same time, I was like, well,
Mhm,
I want people to care only because I don't think that there's a representation for people like me. And
mhm.
there are people like me. And like when I look at the demographics for my podcast and like my blog and stuff, I see the age range. I see the race of men who are reading it and listening to it and tuning in. I know what it is. And so there is an audience for it. And I know what that audience even is, kind of. And so I just feel like someone needs to give them a voice because you know what? If I can tune into 30 podcasts and they're all saying the same jokes, the same political views, the same religious views. I'm just like, it's too much. It's an echo chamber. We need to stop it because I'm not the only one who feels like this. And I think that we need to
Mhm.
like have communities and be able to like make those connections with people because it really does help just get you through the day.
Have you had any response from your listeners where they say, I've been waiting for someone like you to say this?
No, no, not really.
Oh.
Like, I think some people think it, but at the same time, I don't think I've been really in your face about my politics, and I haven't been like, saying outrageous things.
Well, you did an episode called, I think it was Are Gay People Funny?
Oh yeah.
And you don't hear that talked about because you think, oh, the gay community loves camp and humor. You think on the surface, oh, yeah, fun loving and, a loving old, drag queens doing Betty. Davis impersonations and funny one-liners or Will and Grace or just, infusing Sex in the City and, that whole kind of modern gay aesthetic and Bravo TV. But I think you kind of hit to something of, yeah, that's kind of the fun, easy stuff. But I think you were trying to talk about the kind of humor that really cuts, like a sophisticated humor, not the easy, funny one-liners, but I think humor that makes you kind of, look at yourself or laugh at yourself. And, so do you think people have gotten to the point, and society in general, people just aren't getting the joke and they're really afraid to laugh at themselves?
I think we're overly sensitive. I think one of the biggest problems is that gay marriage got legalized and now we're just like everyone else. These kids that are growing up, and not to say they don't have a struggle, they struggle. A lot of kids in many parts of the world still struggle with coming out and being gay and like and not being ashamed of who they are or whatever. And so I feel like having to grow up in an environment where you're rejected, where you're getting called names every day, where your family, you're thrown out on the streets or whatever, it builds character. It turns you into a certain kind of person. And not to say that those things should still be happening, but it's like once we hit gay marriage and we had nothing to fight for because everything had been pretty much given to us, it's like, well, then what are we? We're just straight. We're like everyone else. And like, how fun is that? It's not. And so I feel like, and then we're fostering these kids that are coming up and just like, we're babying them. We're like, if they're snowflakes, we don't want to hurt their feelings. Everyone gets a trophy, and I'm just like, what kind of people or human beings are we producing here? Like, wherever they are, they're boring as fuck and they don't have personalities and they're not funny.
Well, a big part of especially stand-up comedy has changed a lot in the past couple years. Where in the past, everything was fair game. And I can see why, if there's just very, anti-gay sentiments, because there have been times where the pendulum is, you know, where, there's horrible laws and things are illegal and people, are discriminated. But when the pendulum swings and there is a lot more freedom, gay marriage is legal, and people in that, state are suddenly pulling back. So it's not like, they're not saying don't do these jokes because, oh, it might inflame violence. It's almost like there's another reason of this tiptoeing. Why now suddenly in this, kind of open environment are people doing the opposite and thinking, no, I've got to curb this. We can't say anything, even though it's a joke. It's too close to being true, or people may not interpret it as a joke. Why have we lost that? Why have people lost the ability to just take everything at face value and not realize, oh, this might be ironic, or I'm just being absurd here? Do you think like a lot of young people have just lost the ability to discern that?
Yeah, I think, honestly, we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, okay? So just, don't be mean.
You think that's it? Just it's that simple. They just don't want to hurt
Don't
feelings.
hurt anyone's feelings. Everyone gets a trophy. Everyone's a winner. It's just like that's not life. Like, what are you teaching someone when you tell them that? When like I remember when I was like 11 years old, I auditioned for this play as a professional theater and I didn't get the part. I was sobbing, I was crying. My mom's like, "Oh, it's okay, Christopher, you'll get the next one." Blah blah blah. And I was like crying. My dad walks in. He's like, "What's wrong with Chris?" And my mom's like, "He didn't get the part in the play." And my dad was like, "Well, the other kid was just better than you. That's the fact, and that's the end of it." And I was like, ah! I cried even more, and it was just like, but that was true, and that's what I needed to
Mhm.
hear. There was other kids who were better than you, and you didn't get the part. Get over it. There'll be another one. And they don't
Yeah.
sugarcoat. They sugarcoat everything, and it's like everyone gets a trophy and everyone's a winner, and it's just like so it just produces a bunch of weaklings. A bunch of kids with no character, no backbone,
Hmm.
in my opinion.
Well, what are the struggles nowadays? On the flip side, what are the true struggles you see in the gay community that should be addressed and should be taken seriously?
Well, if you talk to most queers, I think they would think like, "Oh, it's white supremacy. Oh, it's the Republicans. It's the Christian, the alt right. They're still going after us." And I'm just thinking, you're so delusional. Like the alt right's not after you. People are much more concerned about themselves, their families, their communities, just providing for their families. They don't care if you're gay. Like they don't. That's over. Like they don't care anymore. You won. And I feel like I don't know why people like I don't know what the struggle of the gay community is now. I think they're just creating struggles at this point because they haven't had to fight for
Hmm.
anything. Like the war's been won. We're done. But I feel like they're creating things to get angry about just because they've got all this energy and all this anger and there's just really nowhere to direct it,
Mhm.
so they're going to create things. And like I think it has to do with, even maybe getting off topic, but like drag queen story hour. Like I feel like there's a group of society who view drag queen story hour as this whole like sexualization of children, and I'm like, I don't really think that's what it is, honestly. But then I feel like the queer community is being very adamant, like they're being militant, like we're going to promote drag queens and for children's story hour, and I feel like they're trying to cause problems with a community of people that they've had problems with in the past, and now they're just like butting heads, and it's just causing more chaos, more division, and it's just like it's unnecessary, and it's causing, yeah, more problems in society, and
Mhm.
it's unfortunate.
Mhm. Well, where do you take all this now? Since you've got opinions, you've tested the waters with your podcast, you've been there, done that, you're entering, an important time, your 40s, got a lot of wisdom. Do you feel like you just have a lot of untapped potential now with, I've got to create some meaning out of all this?
Um, I think I end up just like being exasperated, and I like throw my arms up on a daily basis and just say, "Ugh, why do I bother? Like I don't even know where I go with this." Like I've started smoking cigarettes a lot more, and you know, I don't know. I have to let it go, and I have to like, because that's, I don't know what else to do, because there's no answers, and I'm not
Mhm,
solving anything. I'm not changing anything in
mhm,
this world, and
mhm,
it requires a lot of patience. As I get older, I'm learning more about patience. I'm learning more about tolerance and just grace,
mhm.
and just like
Are you finding a community? Do you go to log cabin Republican events? So are you meeting other like-minded people?
I do, and I have been, and it's been great. They don't have a lot of a lot of events, but I've been going to them, and I'm also going to be joining the Young Republicans Club of Los Angeles, and that's for straight and gay.
What's the age cutoff on that?
40. But they you can still join it. No, no, it's like,
I'm just teasing you there.
but it's weird though. Like now I go to events like that, and I'm like, no, I didn't think that I could join, but they're like, oh yeah, you can join if you're turning 40. You can even be in your 40s, but you can't run.
Just get grandfathered in when you're 39. Sneak in and you're there for life.
Well, in the Republican Party, like the average age is like 78, so 40 is pretty. It's a spring chicken to them. So I've been going to their events. I went to like the shooting range a couple weeks ago, and I shot a gun for the first time, and became a member of the NRA. And so I'm learning these things that I never thought I would do, and I'm with a community of people who think like me, and we're not like hardcore
Mhm,
Republicans, conservatives, like maybe some of us are, but we're just like, we're there, we're having conversations. None of us feel afraid to like say what we mean, and it's nice. It's
what's it like when you come to a log cabin Republican meeting? Christopher Daniels,
I don't think anyone knows who I am. I did tell a couple people like I have a past. I did porn or whatever. They're like, oh, okay. Like I guess it's just like surprise. But I never think
Mhm,
anyone knows who I am. So I'm not really sure. I haven't really delved into it. It's been very like cordial and very surface.
mhm,
Like I haven't really developed really deep friendships yet. But
mhm.
I've met a lot of great people, and
Have you met Colby Keller?
no, but you know what? I'm kind of like more in sync with what he has said in the past, and it's kind of all like making sense now, just like his path. And I think we're on somewhat similar paths, and but I don't really even know what he's doing. Like, but no, him and I think are very similar, and I would like to actually talk.
Do you think you should invite him to your show?
I should. Oh, totally. But is he even in? Do you know where he lives? Is he in Pennsylvania, or I don't know. I have no idea.
Last I heard, he was an artist. He was pursuing his graphic art, his, I don't know, painting or drawing or something. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, if he's homeless and a
Something
graphic
like that.
artist, then he should definitely be in LA, because LA is full of homeless graphic artists. So maybe he's here. I don't know. I'll check it out.
He's probably in the blue hills of Kentucky and living on a farm, and who knows? I mean, do you see yourself, since you've done the big city, do you see yourself moving out to the country someday?
Honestly, I'm at a point in the past year. I've come to the conclusion that that might be my reality. We'll see. I actually just started a new job this past month, and I think it's going to keep me in Southern California for a while. And but I still have this a desire. I'm like, oh, maybe I should just move to Kentucky or Idaho. What about Idaho? Let's go to Idaho. But I think I might be not stuck here, but staying here for a while. But yes, I do think about it a lot, actually. Just packing up and moving to South Dakota.
What do you think? Maybe. those are the people that have your values now, is people in small towns.
And you know what? I fought my whole life to get away from places like that, and now I'm like, I think I need to go. I need to go back to a place like that. But we'll see. Like, honestly, California has a lot of people who think like me and who have the same beliefs, but it's just hard to find them because there's so many, and there's the other extreme, which is everywhere. So it's hard to find. But I'm
Mhm.
finding my crew, and the job that I'm starting is with my best friend who have same beliefs as me, and so that's really helpful, and that's actually making things a lot easier.
Mhm. We'll wrap up soon here. Not quite, but before we do, first of all, I mean, you have a presence online. I have to look at my notes. I don't know why I can never remember this. Red Light Leisures. That's your podcast, but isn't that also kind of your website and your home base?
Yeah, yeah, it's all kind of like all wrapped up into that whole name. I really didn't know what I wanted, what I was even doing when I started this, but I called it Red Light Leisures, and I called it that. And I don't know if people get that from the title, but I called it Red Light Leisures because I wanted it to be like, think like red light city, sort of nightlife mixed with like conservative and people with family values who like to occasionally go to the red light district at night, in a trench coat and like look at seedy movies or whatever. Like, so it's kind of a mix of both worlds, which is kind of my life. It feels like some days. So
And it's developing because it seems like you started that not too long ago, and it sounds like you're kind of testing it out and seeing where it'll go.
yeah, and I wasn't sure where my politics would fit into it, and I actually created a lot of podcasts and blog entries about certain things with my politics, and I decided to hold back on that because I just felt like the energy and the hatred and directed towards my people it was just getting too intense, and I kind of freaked out. I was just like, I can't put myself out there like that at this point. And so I wasn't really sure if my conservative views were like coming through, but I want them to come through in a way that people can handle it and like be open-minded to it. So I'm not really sure how I'm coming across because it hasn't been a lot of interaction with people. People are really silent, I feel like, for whatever reasons, and I think it's just because they don't really know what to say. Like, most people would disagree with me, and
Mhm.
I don't know, I have no idea.
When you escorted, did you ever come across closeted men, maybe married men, but who belonged to the church, the pillar of the community? Do you ever have any meaningful conversations with those men and what their lives were like?
Yes, honestly, that was the majority of the people that I saw. It was and I would like to go back now and trying to find out like how many of them had conservative values or political beliefs, because they had this other life, and I was sort of there to provide a service for them and like be that escape for a little bit, because I don't think that they were necessarily gay. I think a lot of them just they had this other life that they were happy with. They had kids, wife, whatever, and this was their little escape a couple times a year, and like, and I don't know if they needed it necessarily, but they just needed to be okay with being with someone that accepts that. So, I don't know what the original question was, but and I don't even know if I answered it. But that's that was my answer.
Did you at least, it sounds like you had an empathy for them even back then, knowing these were men living a fairly conservative life?
Yeah, yeah, and I have very few regrets about escorting, and I don't have very many bad memories of it. And I don't know if that's good or bad, because I don't regret escorting or any of that, because most of the connections that I had were with men just like that, and like I met some really great people, and I loved hearing their stories, and just
Mm.
knowing that I could be that
This was in
escape.
Vegas too.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
This is when you were in Vegas, so probably a lot of happy people on vacation.
yeah, and a lot of like middle-aged men going to, conventions or CES, and the big conventions, and this was their little escape for the year or whatever. So it was
Mhm.
yeah, it was actually very wholesome, that part of my escorting life. So it's good.
Mm. Well, here's another quote I found. The pain you have been feeling cannot compare to the joy that is coming. That's from the Bible, Romans 8:18. Have you re-embraced your religion of your childhood?
Yes, I have, and it's hard to talk about that because as soon as you say that, people immediately think, "Oh, he's born again, or he's a Jesus freak, or he's a Bible thumper," and it's not. That's not it at all. And I've re- I've re-embraced it, and it's a huge part of my life. And I honestly am at the first time in my life that I want to share it with people, because everything that I thought about my religion and my faith is just completely was completely wrong. And I just feel like people are really missing out, and they don't understand the freedom and the what it's really about. And maybe they do, but I just feel like for me, I was totally blinded um, by whatever it was that was blinding me, and I found a newfound love for my faith, and I'm a different person, but at the same time, I'm like still the same person I was. Like I'm just I don't know. It's hard to explain. I hate saying like even that I'm a Christian because immediately people will be like Christians are like this. He must be like that, and they just have these preconceived ideas that they just aren't accurate. And I just feel like I'm so much more than all that. So I do have a newfound love for my faith, and it means a lot to me. And I'm really glad. I'm really
Mhm.
happy where I'm at, even though it's very difficult, and it's been great. So I'm very thankful.
Well, sometimes for a religious journey, rejection by the world, is a valuable component. Do you think, the reaction to you coming out as a Republican, from your, people close to you, this rejection, do you think that enhances the religious experience?
I do, and I think that it's like there's a song that like we used to sing in church. It's called "Refiner's Fire," and it's about refining the silver or the metal, or it has to go through such intense heat to become pure silver. And that's what I think it is. It's like just being put through like the hottest fire and just like dealing with that pain and like the feeling of being feeling like you're being burned alive some days. And then, but that's the only way that you're going to become pure and you're going to become clean and holy, and like you'll become who you were really meant to be. And so I kind of feel like it's like that song,
Mhm.
Refiner's Fire. So that's
What do your parents think of this return to the church?
um
Do you share this with them? Do you talk about this?
honestly my dad's passed away and my mom is not well, so it's hard to talk to them about it because I think they would be very happy for me, but my mom just doesn't remember anything, so it's
Mhm.
hard. But I know they're happy. I know she's happy about it, and it's hard.
Sure. Well, I hope you are able to visit her.
Yeah, we'll see.
Good. So my final, since my podcast, it can be a lot of things like yours. I think mine's expanding. A lot of it's about exploitation film and cult icons. So I guess you're a cult icon. So maybe that's how you're wedged in here. But um, without it having to be, sexual, I just love the whole, to learn about what just making adult films is like from the behind the scenes practical side. And of course, I've heard, oh, it takes longer than you think and hours to, film 5 minutes. Yeah, we all know that. But here's what I want to know is what are porn directors like?
Um, they're a little um this is a pretty good example of what porn directors are like. Brian Mills, who was one of the directors and owners of Titan Media, who I worked with quite a bit. Um,
Because they're a major company.
yes, huge and like
Yeah, yeah, they're a big one.
very iconic with their men, And
Hmm.
at the end of the day, Brian Mills would go home and watch The Little Mermaid. That's what porn directors are like. He would go to home watch Little Mermaid to cleanse his palate. That was his sorbet because he would need to after all
To
that.
cleanse the palate.
Yes.
That's pretty good. I remember the Tracy Ullman show. She had this one skit or segment where it was a porn shoot, and it's just making like the director out to be this family man. Oh, we gotta come on, let's wrap this up. I gotta, you know, pick up the kids from softball practice or something. Just kind of showing they all had routine lives too, which of course they do. But it's always, I think, this shock to people that, these people actually have lives.
Yeah, that's very true. And like one of the first sets that I was on, the guy that was filming, he was straight and he'd been filming gay porn for 4 years. His father had done it for 20 years, and his father's father had done it for like 15 years. All of them straight, all of them married, all filmed gay porn. That was their career. Try to wrap your head
Wow.
around that. Like that was so bizarro to me. I was like, what the hell? But yeah.
Who was the most artistic porn director you worked for?
I forget his name, but he works for men.com and he filmed me in 4 scenes when I went to Spain to film with them. He's brilliant. He's amazing, and he is too good for the work that he does. He's better than that.
Spain. It wasn't like a Christian Bjorn, was it?
No, he was a younger guy. He was straight, and but he did gay porn, and he was like such a artist with it. And like, it was like too good for gay porn, you know. But
Hmm.
yeah, if you find yeah, if you ever look up men. His work for men.com, he was amazing. He was a good art. He was a good director.
And what was just the most artistic storyline you worked on? Because one thing about porn nowadays, all porn, gay, straight, anything, especially with streaming, now it's like the performer doesn't need a director. People are just creating their own. But, back in the day, the days of porn with storylines, like what's the most memorable storyline where you had to actually do acting?
Um, before the days of the cum dumps and the rapey porn, um, the storyline porn that stands out to me, there was like the Falcon movies. Those were always storyline porn, and then doing Men in the Sand, that was storyline porn. Like those were stories, and we did B-roll, and like they were created over a couple days, and like those there was the ones with Falcon. Yeah, like definitely storyline. It was like I look back on that now and I think, oh, that's so sweet. Like it was a good memory because they did that and they catered to that audience because some people still like that.
So, how many movies did you do for Falcon?
Like at least 10, probably close to 12, I think, 12 or 13.
And so, who was working there when you did it? Because weren't there some high profile directors at Falcon?
Oh yeah, like Steve Cruz, Brian Bond, Bruno Bonds, his husband, uh, Dave Rosen, um, Adam Robinson was casting, and there was Eric Rhodes was there, and then he passed
Mhm.
away after. Yeah, I was there when he was there, so it's still like kind of old school.
So, what else was like? So, were things starting to turn when you got out of the biz in 2015? Was streaming probably taking over, but also the whole movement of performers just being their own entity without a studio, like Chatterbait, like all this new technology letting you do it without them.
That was starting because when I left, I think that's when people were really getting into Cam 4, but that hadn't quite started. Like when I was in porn, it was still like the final nail on the coffin as far as porn and DVDs. Like
Mhm.
they realized that's not going to happen, and they just started doing the streaming. So it was. I think I got into porn the last of the age of the porn star. Like that was still around, And then once I
Mhm.
left, it was like, yeah, no, no more.
And the best set you ever worked on, highest budget, the most perks, where you were just treated like royalty.
Falcon always treated. Yeah, Falcon treated you like you were a star. Like they treated you really well, and it was nice.
They do your makeup.
Um, Yeah, but you know what? Yeah, a little bit. Next Door Studios was really good like that, and Titan. They would have like like
Mhm.
it was a production with those companies, so which was nice. But sometimes
Mhm.
you're just like, oh, we're just fucking. Like, do we have to do all this work? Like, whatever. But yeah.
The oddest place where someone recognized you from your movies.
Oh, sometimes like I was getting like a blowjob in a adult video arcade, and my porn would come on, and they would recognize me, and they're like, "What are you?" Yeah. I'm like, "Uh huh," and like it would just be like awkward and like kind of kill the mood, and so that was always fun.
Almost like virtual reality.
Yeah, but it's not sexy. It's not sexy for either party.
Come to life. And then how about for your co-stars? Did you become good friends with any other actors?
I made a lot of friendships, and I made way more friendships than enemies, and I had a really good experience most of the time. I haven't really kept in touch with most of them because we all live in different cities. So, and porn stars aren't always the stablest people, so we're kind of all drifting and floating around. So, but I have more good than bad memories, definitely.
So what are the common denominators with you and all the other actors?
We all want money. We all want to check. And we all not
So,
and I can't even say we all like sex because a lot of porn stars don't really like sex. I'm not very good at it, so that's not it.
and is gay for pay a real thing?
Ugh, yes, it needs to stop. Actually, I don't care anymore, but yes, it
But
is.
what's the psychology of it? Is it compartmentalized? How does a straight man do gay porn?
I have a theory, and that theory is they're either dumber than a sack of hair, or they just need real money, or they just don't really care. Very few times did I find that oh they're really gay. Like that's very rarely ever that was part of the equation.
Hmm. And finally, to give you the last word here, um, I'm really looking forward to the new book. You know, until now, I didn't know you were doing it. So, what are you going to add to this? I mean, and hopefully, do you think maybe that's something you'll do more of? Do you see yourself, having a career writing more books, maybe about, bigger thoughts and, just other commentary?
Um, yes, and I think I honestly really need to figure out how I'm going to um, come full circle with it and like really like I'm like missing the last like 10 pages of the book. That's it. And I'm trying to figure that out. And honestly, I'm actually starting a new podcast very soon and it's going to be completely different. It goes with my new position that I have. And so but it's going to be inspiring and it's going to be very much still who I am and like but it's about I'll be podcasting about jazz. The art of jazz dancing. So that's like my new
Mm,
venture and I don't want it to be two totally different worlds, but at the same time, it'll be somewhat different. But that's my new sort of new
mm.
focus that I'm going to be spending time on. So
Are you starting to teach jazz dance?
no, I'm not. My best friend who lives in Southern California, she became the artistic director of a classical jazz company in Southern California, and she's also taking over as the artistic director for a very established school in Southern California. And so she's this huge new change in her life is artistic director of a school and a professional company. And so I'm going with her. I'm going to be in charge of marketing, publicity, and social media, and then be doing a YouTube channel and a podcast. So that's going to be my
Oh,
new
wow.
venture.
So the podcast, it's on jazz dance or jazz music.
Jazz dance, and we're going to make jazz great again. Like Maga.
So are you going to have guests on, like prominent people from the jazz dance world?
Yes, we're gonna be. I'm gonna be interviewing the dancers in the company, the people that do the music. So some of it will be jazz music as well, but the choreographers, the musicians, and Janelle took over the company from her mentor who passed away 2 years ago. So I want to incorporate her legacy into it. So I'll be interviewing different people, all related to this dance company, but also to preserve the legacy and the art of jazz, classical jazz dancing.
Wow. So COVID must be affecting this. Are you still going to be up and running?
Oh yeah, yeah. They've been sort of still rehearsing throughout COVID. Like they've had some downtimes, obviously, but no, they're pushing through because like not everything in the world's going to stop for this thing. So the Ballet Academy, it's
Mhm,
happening. It's going to be a slow handover, and the new company, and it's a new professional program, and it's all happening. So it's going to be a slow process, but
mhm.
it's definitely going to happen.
That's exciting. What's this new podcast going to be called?
I'm not going to say just because I think I might have even said too much now because I she has to keep it hush hush, and the fact that like I'm working for her and I'm telling people like it's gonna be the tagline in it is called "Making Jazz Great Again," so that'll be a part of it. But the name of the podcast is still I haven't really quite finished that part yet. So yeah,
Well, just call it anything except jazz hands.
I love it. Okay, I
Can
promise. No,
can can you're on camera? Can you? So, what are actual jazz hands? They're not this, is it? It's not this thing.
yes, of course. You gotta. Can we do jazz?
Oh, you got to wiggle the fingers too.
Spirit fingers.
Okay, and finally, for the final, with an Oprah moment, eh, serious but hopeful. So we talked about decades. They say every 7 years we change, but maybe let's say every decade you can reinvent yourself. And you're ripe for reinvention. You've got I think an optimistic attitude. So for people who've heard, this story, and especially getting down, people on social media and just people clobbering you nowadays everywhere. We're all getting that. And it's been just a clobbered last year. What's the hopeful thing to say? You actually can let go of a lot of stuff and reinvent yourself, or if you're not happy with something, you can change it, and it's not dependent on the permission of others or other people's opinions. What's just a really good motivating statement you can give us?
Um, I just think it's really important to not place too much value and importance and stress on things of this world because our time here is very short, I believe. And There's so much more. We're like a little speck of sand in the grand scheme of things. So I just feel like people should constantly be looking towards eternal things, like spiritual, out of, things that are not of this earth, and always put others first. I think that's the most important thing.
Well, his name is Christopher Daniels. He's from Saskatchewan, and I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad this happened. So I appreciate it.